Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here for an excellent session today. We were just talking downstairs about the parallels between what we've seen with BIM over the past 10, 12, 15, keep going years, and what we've been hearing today on digital twins, and what we've been seeing over the past couple of years as well. And we thought that would be a useful conversation to have with you. And we really welcome your questions, comments, and thoughts around that topic as well. Before we get into that, we should do quick introductions of both Bob and myself to kind of give you a view as to what our perspective is, what our experience is. And also I'm going to invite Bob to say a few words about your perspective on digital twins, what you're doing, and I think also why you're doing what you're doing.
You know, that's really dangerous because we could be here all night.
This could be a long one. All right, well, we'll keep it the abridged version in that case then. But I think just quick introductions, first of all, to explain ourselves. Bob might be useful. I'll kick us off. So my perspective on this is, having worked in the arena of BIM for probably 10, 12 years, I was involved in the original UK government strategy back in 2010. Latterly, I've been leading an international program which primarily works government to government, that is to say from the UK government to other governments in terms of, well, two things really. One, collaboration, learning from each other, but also encouraging a common approach for the introduction of BIM into public policy, into public programs, and into infrastructure projects for two reasons. First of all, to create better outcomes for the built environment. By that we mean a lot of the things we've been hearing about here today in terms of building climate resiliency, supporting net zero, more effective use of public spending as an outcome. And secondly, to drive a trade effect, and that is to say that by aligning standards and having common understanding across countries, we are better placed to be able to trade with each other. We reduce the friction between us to allow trade to happen, first of all. So those are the two reasons why we've been doing our international program, which has been running for about 7 or 8 years. And we were, well, with that, and I should also say that I'm here today with two hats, not just with the catapult hat, which is this UK government-funded international program, but also representing the National Digital Twin. Now that's also a government program, UK government program, which is looking to develop some of the data infrastructure, some of the systems that will support a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. With that, Bob, maybe a quick introduction for yourself.
Sure. Bob Bray, been with Autodesk for a decade, maybe two, maybe more. Started with Autodesk when they had a GIS group. Have many of loved the tricks, by the way, those were fantastic. Love geography, but I've been working with Autodesk building software for pretty much every aspect of the AEC industry for 20 plus years. Last 3.5 years, I've been focused on our digital twin strategy, and that got started because of the reality of the industry, the fact that we built BIM as a life cycle solution, and this whole concept of BIM was really about the life cycle. What really happened with BIM is it became a way to create paper faster and more accurately. And it never really materialized into a life cycle solution. And there is a real opportunity right now in the world and a hunger in the world between owners to project teams to deliver projects better, to deliver projects digitally, and to get past this notion of, well, what I like to call the BIM to FM handover gap, which has existed forever. Organizations today, owners, they spec projects, they spend a ton of money on a project, they get this massive stack of digital paper at the end of the project, and then they have to turn that back into data to operate their facility effectively. They build these buildings to hit certain performance criteria, and they can't even begin to measure that until they turn that back into data and start to measure the performance of their building against the specs they created. They have facility managers that operate based on gut and intuition, not data. And really those facility managers, if you arm them with data, we could have far more efficient buildings that operate more effectively, and your maintenance cost, instead of being highly reactive, could be proactive and reduced significantly. And finally, we will never get to the point of being able to design and build a better world unless we can actually understand how buildings operate in the real world and use that to design and build better in the future. So connecting this life cycle from plan, design, build into asset operations, building that wealth of knowledge about that built asset and how it operates, and feeding that back into future design, plan, build life cycle is how we will eventually build better in the future.
Bob, just talk a little bit about, in practical terms, what does that mean? Where are you focusing right now? And then what potentially is the next step after that?
The number one problem we focused on is this idea of digital handover. How do we implement a practical implementation of the specification known as ISO 19650 Division 3, which is the asset information requirements? How does an owner ask a project team, their delivery team, this is the data I need to operate my building effectively? And how do we give tools to that project team that the owner can track digital delivery of that data, ensuring its completion and accuracy at project turnover, so they have a building that's ready to go? And then the second stage of that is, okay, great, I've got a building that's ready to go on day one. I've got a digital replica of that building. How do I now connect that to my operational systems and data? How do I initialize my maintenance management, my asset management solution from that data? How do I connect work order history, visualize work order history in that building? How do I visualize my IoT sensors? Owners have a ridiculous amount of silos of data in their organizations. We've been twinning our own facilities, and the fun example that I like to use all the time is even at Autodesk, a room is known by multiple identities. They have an identity crisis because the building management system knows it as one ID, the room booking system knows it as another, the occupancy sensor knows it as another. How in the heck do you correlate that data? How do you get any value out of that? You can't today. You have to be able to bind this data, correlate it, and then understand it.
So turning a little bit towards some of the parallels and challenges that we've seen over the past 10, 15 years with regards to BIM, we were talking downstairs and this morning, in fact, about how in the early days of BIM, one of the challenges was that there was a need for it, but there wasn't really an understanding as to how it was going to be used. So people were asking for BIM, especially in contracts as well, but not really understanding what they're asking for or why, and how to track those benefits. How do you see those parallels in particular to what you're doing right now?
Rinse, wash, repeat. We are literally on a repeat cycle right now because in terms of project delivery, the world of digital twin looks exactly like BIM did 10 to 15 years ago. We now see our customers receiving RFPs asking for a digital twin delivery with no actual definition of what they're looking for. So it becomes that same cycle of contractors working with BIM in the early days or getting contracts requirements for BIM without that clarity, and we see the same thing. So it's really about education right now, understanding what's possible, why you want to do it, the outcomes you're looking to achieve, which was the last lead question, and also, the data required to achieve those outcomes, and really starting to drive that education in the industry so that we have better data outcomes from a project.
BIM saw tremendous challenges initially around technology, definitions, standards, and then increasingly that led into the social change, the need to actually change behaviors, and across an industry that's, of course, incredibly fragmented. That problem seems many factors more complex with digital twins because of the number of stakeholders that are involved. Clearly, the number of organizations, I think we saw from Sarah's presentation, just those handful of organizations that are working on the Credo project is in a sense a kind of a microcosm, really.
It's not a technology problem.
Yeah, right.
It's really not. It is very much there's many factors, but there is contractual challenges, Contractors are only going to deliver what they're paid to deliver at the end of the day. It is a challenge of understanding what's needed. What are the outcomes I'm looking for? Why am I looking for that? What data do I need to achieve that? That understanding is pretty critical. And then also the change in the project lifecycle to be capturing that data at the right point and delivering that data accurately. None of those things are really technology challenges. Technology can help, it's an enabler, but it's not really going to solve the problem by itself. It is a culture change.
Which then leads on to, again, something we saw in the BIM phase of development was value being perceived and secured within small organizations, larger organizations, architects, engineers, then contractors, and then progressively with owners as well, asset owners in particular. And then government started to get involved. Government started to recognize that actually there's a macro benefit here and started to do things to encourage it. What's your reflection on that as a parallel?
Government mandates can help, but it'll take more than government mandates. I really do think, and what I see the trend in industry right now is people learning a lot of investment in starting small with a proof of concept. I think what we're learning out of that leads to the appropriate types of new deliverables, eventually to mandates, and I think mandates will eventually be prominent, similar to the BIM mandates in the UK. How many years ago?
12, roughly.
I think there'll be digital twin mandates in a few years. I really do think that will happen. But I think we have more to learn before then.
Yeah. So just taking a longer term look, now this is kind of going further out, where do you see some of the value and the opportunity once we get past some of these challenges? If you think about the things you referred to, steadily building out from a unitary, a single digital twin to collections of, where do you see this kind of in whatever time frame you want, 10, 15 plus years?
I might be retired by then. I think, near term, it's solving more pragmatic problems. Long term, much more the social, economic problems of the world, climate change, things like that. But we need to be able to have a world of what I like to call federated twins. You're not going to want to build one twin of even a campus. Doesn't make any sense. Each building is a twin. Each component or system in a building is often a twin. They need to be connected together. They need to be surfacing data to the next twin up the line so that you're surfacing the right data at the right level of abstraction to make use out of it. I think that is key. One of the things that has to happen for any of this to be accomplished, though, is a good normalization of data. Organizations today have tons of data. It is tons of silos of data. Again, it's not normalized. I talk to building owners often. They have large real estate portfolios, don't even use the same maintenance management solution across that portfolio. So how can they ever roll up data consistently to actually understand maintenance history across their portfolio of devices? They can't. So that data normalization leads to the ability to view data holistically, do things like predictive analytics, machine learning, some AI. Eventually you get to that idea of that autonomous twin, which was in the previous maturity model. But you also get the ability to start to surface data and interconnect twins at a building scale, at a campus scale, at a city scale, and larger.
Yeah. So kind of pulling us back from that far vision, which you touched on there, interesting. We heard it in some of the presentations about AI, of course, machine learning. So those things are continually evolving at pace, aren't they? So that's going to create new opportunities potentially as well for this.
Tons of new opportunities, but I think, again, AI only works when you have good normalized data sets. If you look at the way AI is being done and things like ChatGPT, I mean, it's ingesting huge volumes of data, and you need to be able to have that data normalized so you can learn from it and build those models, and that does require changes to the way we think about data.
Yeah. One of the key things, just to come back before we turn to questions, I think you mentioned it in the previous answer about the connection to ISO 19650 and how you saw that linkage as important in order to kind of put the foundation in place for digital twins within the operating environment. You called out specifically, I think, part 3. Could you talk about, building on that BIM as an underlying kind of foundation to progress?
Yeah, just like BIM, when we started to understand BIM and started to normalize BIM, and we built, your BIM specification, it's similar. Owners need to define a normalized asset data definition, their asset data requirements. They need to standardize on that. We need to be able to deliver against those requirements. So it is very similar to BIM in that way too, in terms of, yes, you have a BIM spec, you'll always have a BIM spec, but you'll also have an asset spec sitting alongside that. That is part of the delivery process. Doesn't have to be in new project delivery either, by the way. If you have existing portfolio of buildings, you still have to understand what your outcomes are, understand what your codified data requirements are, and then start to do data completion against that, regardless of whether you're doing, scan to a model, using reality capture, capturing that data directly from the devices in the field, whatever it might be. It's the same process.
So we speak a lot about, in the BIM environment, so to speak, the information management space, we talk about intelligent clients. Actually, it's evolving capacity in both the industry and digital skills, but also on the client side, because as you say, there's got to be clarity on what they're asking for and why.
Yes. What you're asking for and why is really critical. What answers are you trying to solve? The other thing I would say is that you don't have to solve every problem on day one. I see a lot of people trying to ocean boil with digital twins. Don't do that. Start with a simple set of use cases, get started, and then evolve over time. I think that's one of the most critical messages I can give. We have a lot of customers doing that right now. Just start pragmatic and move from there.
I think that was me making that noise. So we do have a couple of questions from the audience for you both. They're related to value, first of all. So in the early days of BIM, there was often a difficulty in quantifying the benefits in the early days. But how do you make sure that the benefits of digital twins are being measured to demonstrate value for the long term?
So the value is interesting. And I actually love the ESRI presentation because there's value generated from the different maturity models of digital twin. So if we start with that idea of that descriptive twin, or just the geometric twin, if you will, I've talked to customers that run retail organizations, and in the US in particular, there's a lot of lawsuits, slippery floor tile, things like that. Most of these store owners have no idea what tile they have installed where. One of them came and said, every time I have an accident or a series of accidents, I basically have to go survey every store to figure out where that tile exists so that I know how much tile to replace. That's an easy question to answer if you have data.
I was good. Well, that actually leads on to our next question, which is asking, is there a way to make digital twins directly from BIM without a reality capture process?
Yes.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that, but have an easy one.
Yes, yes, there is technology to build a twin directly from BIM data during the project lifecycle. I might be building one of those products. It's called Autodesk Tandem.
Excellent, thank you very much. So I think we have time for one more, so I'm going to pick the short question. Digital twins seem to involve modeling and spatial analysis primarily, but to connect them, what level of interoperability do we need to achieve? Bit of a broad one.
So there's two significant problems, maybe three, in the world of digital twins today. We've talked a lot about the first, which is data normalization and standards. The second is the fact that every IT, OT system in the world today, both your information technology, your maintenance management systems, et cetera, have different API standards, different data standards, plus all your OT technology, your building management systems, your sensors, all of this stuff all have different standards. That is a massive problem in the world. So connecting all of that stuff requires starting to get to some standards around, in particular, sensor technology.
Excellent. Well, I'm afraid that is all the time we have for today from Adam and Robert. I would like to thank you both very much for your really interesting talk today. Thank you so much for your time. Adam Matthews and Robert Bray, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.